Firstly, I want to preface this review by saying that despite the fact I'm going to critique this film, I am very happy that it exists. Whilst I'm often left disappointed by Ridley Scott's films, such as last year's Napoleon, he is the only director still making historical epics, which are my favourite genre of film, and one which has sadly died out. So for keeping this genre going, I commend him. Now, let's get down to the film. It begins with a battle much like the original Gladiator. However, unlike in the first film, where the opening battle is one of the highlights of the film, here the battle felt really quite sudden, nonsensical, and kind of cheap looking. Some of the CGI looks really quite bad. If it were just the explosion effects, it would be okay, but the animals in the animal fights look ridiculous, which undermines the main, attraction of the film Gladiator. However, the writing is the key flaw with the film. As we knew originally, the writer behind last year's terrible Napoleon, David Scarpa, returns here, and whilst this script is definitely better than Napoleon's, it still has major issues. It's definitely historically inaccurate. Like the first film, it's pure fiction, but that isn't the main problem. The problem is a serious lack of logic. For example, why was Lucius, the hero of the film, exiled and living in a shack in the African desert? At the end of the first film, the good guys essentially won. His mother won. Rome was being restored to a republic, so why was the kid made to flee for his life on the very same day that his mother triumphed? Who was threatening him? The Senate? They're his mother's friends. The co-emperors? They probably weren't even born. It's never explained why his mother essentially had to disown him and exile him, and it seems the only reason is to create the conflict that drives the early part of the film. Secondly, at the beginning, why are the Romans attacking a walled city from the sea with ships? Why did they win so easily? Why did it feel like such a walkover? They tried to give Lucius a powerful reason to fight at the beginning by mimicking the death of Maximus and his family from the first film. The problem is that there's no build-up. It's just one cliched scene on the peaceful family farm. Then the wife becomes a strong female warrior and dies. Secondly, I really don't feel bad for either of them. She wasn't an innocent civilian unjustly murdered. She was a willing soldier who died in battle, so there's really no emotional investment. Meanwhile, the two main villains, the two co-emperors, are likewise poorly written. We're never really given any reason to genuinely dislike them. They're just presented like, hey, these guys are losers, hate them. And then everything they do is so over the top that none of it feels real or threatening. It feels like a pantomime. With that being said, the film begins to heat up and improve as it progresses. A few scenes are genuinely good and well written, and whilst the climax feels a little bit disappointing as we are denied an epic battle, it finishes on a rather open note, clearly laying the groundwork for the planned Gladiator 3. Sadly, whilst I'd respect Harry Gregson Williams, indeed he produced one of the most beautiful piano pieces ever composed for the film Man on Fire, likewise starring Denzel Washington, yet here Harry produces no memorable themes. It was obviously too much to expect him to match Hans Zimmer's incredible score for the original, but sadly, Williams comes nowhere near. With that being said, the film has some positives. Across the board, the acting is quality stuff. The young Paul Mescal does a commendable job as the protagonist. I'm a fan of Denzel Washington, and whilst this wasn't his best performance, he brings some much needed star power and, dare I say it, spice to this film, so I approve his inclusion. Without him, it would have been considerably more boring. Connie Nielson does a good job, as does the industry veteran Derek Jacobi, who it's good to see is still acting. Likewise, it was nice to see the Israeli actor Lior Raz make an appearance, and Pedro Pascal was likewise brought in to add some star power, though unlike Washington's, his performance was unexceptional. It should be noted that while some of the battle CGI looked bad, the panorama-type shots, including those of the city of Rome and the Colosseum, were very pretty and much better than the original. To conclude, I'm torn when it comes to what score I should give this film. If comparing it to the great historical epics of the past, I'd say a 6.5 out of 10 is reasonable. But compared to the kind of stuff that gets produced these days, I'd give Gladiator 2 a solid 9 out of 10.